Hi, everyone. We are going to get started in just a minute, so if you don't mind taking your seats, I'll invite the panel up to their desks. Thanks, guys. I just want to welcome everybody here in person at the beautiful Spaceport Cornwall and online who are joining us remotely. It's been a really exciting day and an exciting couple of weeks for us at Virgin Oribt. So thank you for making the trek out here or joining virtually. We're happy to share this launch with all of you. And especially today to talk to you about what we're looking at. So just a real quick logistical note. Like I said, we are hosting some people in person as well as online, so we're going to do a little bit of a back and forth flow, where we're going to first answer some questions in person, and then we'll probably go to the virtual room to make sure we're giving some time to those people. So as we get started, I just wanted to say we at Virgin Oribt, as you know, we're now in the final preparation for our next launch. It's called Start Me Up. The launch will carry 9 satellites for an international pool of space innovators, the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office, UK Defense and Science and Technology Laboratory, Satellite Applications Catapult, Horizon Technology, the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, Rhea Group, Space Forge, Sat Revolution, and the Sultanate of Oman are all riding aboard our flight this week. So to learn more about each mission and customer, you can have a look at the press kit that was sent out to you. We're also delighted to help you connect with our customers to learn more about their individual spacecraft. So if you have any specific spacecraft questions, feel free to connect with one of us from the media team and we'll put you in touch with the right people. A little bit more about the mission. So the launch service was acquired by the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, from the Virgin Oribt National Systems subsidiary of Virgin Oribt. It's also, as you guys know, a very special launch for us because it's the first international launch for Virgin Oribt. It's also the first ever orbital launch attempt from the United Kingdom, or indeed anywhere else in Western Europe. Our panelists today can tell you all about the incredible collaboration and effort that made that possible, and also about what it means for Cornwall and for the UK. A little bit about how the launch actually works before we go into the Q&A period. So Launcher 1 is a 2-stage rocket. It's mated to a customized, upcycled 747 that we call Cosmic Girl. It's going to depart from a runway just like any other normal plane. It'll head out to its designated drop point and release the rocket about an hour after that takeoff. A few seconds after release, Launcher 1 will ignite its main rocket engine and begin its boost towards space. It will be in space for a few minutes later, but the mission will continue until the vehicle has reached its final orbit and deployed all of its payloads about an hour or so after release. As I mentioned previously, we're currently in our final pre-launch preparations focused on closely monitoring the health of the system and our payloads as we get everything ready for flight. Our engineers are pouring through the data and verifying everything as we'd like it to be. Assuming that everything continues to look good, we're currently tracking well for launch tomorrow, which should see a takeoff time somewhere around 9:40 p.m. Local, and until maybe 11 p.m. local time, with the rocket drop approximately an hour after that takeoff. That said, as is standard for space launch, and as you guys have already learned, mission success is our first priority, and if we need to adjust any part of that schedule, we will. We have good windows later this week and next week. For following along with launch, we are live streaming. We're also live tweeting the flight in addition to hosting many of you here at beautiful Spaceport Cornwall. So with that, pleased to introduce our panelists, Annett from the UKSA, Dan Hart from Virgin Oribt, and Melissa Thorpe from Spaceport Cornwall. And with that, we have about 45 minutes for Q&A, both virtual and in person. So I am going to start here in person and close my laptop. So with that, who shall ask the first question? Oh, just a second. Someone's going to bring a mic to you so we can hear you. Thanks.
Victoria Graham from BBC Spotlight. This will be a historic moment for Cornwall. What relevance will this have to people sitting at home with a cup of tea just down the road in their homes?
I think what we've seen over the last 8 years is this building of excitement towards something very aspirational and different for Cornwall. Something that started off as a project that not a lot of people really believed it was ever going to happen. And we've just really pushed so hard as a team to get to the point that we are today, working with our friends and family at Virgin at UK Space Agency. And I think they've seen a small team here in Cornwall that live and breathe this county deliver something quite incredible. And so I hope that when they're sitting at home, they feel a bit of inspiration or aspiration and feel proud of how we're representing Cornwall going to the stars. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom out there at the moment, and something like this where you're feeling this excitement, you see all the school children excited about it, you see nanas and grandfathers excited about it, it kind of crosses all generations. And so I really think that people sitting at home, it's just something exciting, it's something different, it's something you don't see every day somewhere like Cornwall. And it's a bit of an underdog story as well, and I think people love an underdog story, especially in the UK. So I really hope that that's what people feel when they're watching it at home.
Thomas Moore, Sky News. Dan, can you explain the concept of a launch window? What governs its start and finish, and what can go wrong at this stage? We know it's blowing a hoolie outside, but what conditions can this cosmic girl actually take off in?
Sure. Well, I mean, a launch window is the culmination of all of the inputs that dictate when a rocket can fly. So it has to do with when the payloads are ready, when the rocket and the rocket system is ready, when the regulatory framework is in place, and the coordination of airspace and across all the parties. And so that's what really dictates the launch window. Our launch window opens tomorrow night with a number of opportunities over the next couple of weeks. We're always geared towards and focused on the beginning of the window, which is why we're here today. But we will be looking very carefully at the readiness of the system as we process forward. Right now, everything is green. The rocket was armed yesterday. And we'll be loading fuel later today. So we're in full motion right now, gearing towards a launch tomorrow. That said, if we see anything interesting that we want to stop and pause and look at relative to the system health, if winds or precipitation or lightning or something like that is in the area, we will look very closely. We're going to proceed cautiously on this flight. We're in different airspace than we've flown before. Our pilots are ready, but we want to make sure we give them every opportunity for a successful mission.
Can you talk more about the weather?
Sure. I mean, the airplane is a very robust airplane. It's a 747. We do keep an eye on crosswinds because we have a rocket under wing. And then, although we certainly have the ability to fly above the clouds, and we do our launch above the clouds, we want to make sure that things like triggered lightning or other items are not in a possibility. And so we do stay very close to the Met Office, and we've gotten some very good support from the local Met Office here. I highly appreciate that, so thanks.
Jordan Wright, the Angry Astronaut. I watched Cosmic Girl land in October. I think you guys were hoping to launch in November, and clearly that hasn't happened. And I'm curious, given the delays, regardless of what may have caused them, has that impacted your future plans of launching from the United Kingdom?
We knew this was not going to be a piece of cake when we took on this opportunity. We've worked very closely with the UK Space Agency, the CAA, Spaceport Cornwall, as well as the international community for airspace. I think we've all learned a lot in doing that. I think, like any first, the first time you do it is difficult. The second time you already know and can anticipate. And so the short answer is we're excited to be here today. We're excited about the future and coming back maybe as soon as later this year to launch again and hopefully get a rhythm going. We want to be a part of the fabric of the space community here in the UK as well as globally. That's our objective as a company, and I think there's great opportunity.
I'd like to add to that as well, and I'm sure you know, Jordan, as well. When you look at programs like SLS and NASA, which has had a number of delays, of course, until it's got to its first launch, and similarly with the likes of ABL, who are another partner that we're working with for Scottish launches, then they're waiting for their first flight as well, because it's difficult, right? So it's important to make sure that you get to a safe, successful launch rather than rush towards failure. And in terms of does it impact on subsequent launches here from the UK, I would say absolutely not. Our role here, of course, is to create a commercially sustainable launch capability, but also it's ensuring that we step through the regulations that we've put in place through primary legislation. There are inevitably things that we are learning from that as well as we go along, and take that at the right pace in order to make sure that it can be successful, it can build confidence across the sector, and then people want to come back and launch from the UK and they see it as a good place to do business, as well as, of course, being inspired by the event itself.
US country. I just wanted to ask, this journey in Cornwall started all back in 2014. That was when the idea first came about. We're now at the precipice of the first launch here from the site. How are you feeling right now? Like, are there butterflies in your stomachs? Like, kind of what's the emotions going through right now?
I don't know about you guys. I feel really focused, actually. I thought I'd feel nervous or maybe anxious, but I don't. I think, and that's just because of the incredible teams that we all have around us. There are a lot of them in this room and across the runway, and they have just absolutely smashed it so that we can go on and do our jobs and feel really confident. So I feel confident and I feel focused and I feel ready to handle whatever comes our way. And I just feel so excited. I feel like seeing yesterday, people getting excited in the public. Like, I cannot wait for the UK to kind of join that exclusive launch club, because it's going to feel good.
To pile on, I always think about my team. They came back just after Christmas, cutting their holiday short so that we could get through our wet dress rehearsal this past week. And so I'm always thinking about how are they doing. And I'll say the spirits are incredibly high. And I really attribute that to, certainly any space launch is exciting, and it's exciting to be a part of. But I think the connection to the community here, to the businesses here, and the working relationships and the mutual excitement about doing a first launch is really having a mark on my team. And I'm frankly very appreciative of the community here for giving us that.
I think I'd say immense excitement. Who would not be excited by the fact that this is the first time that it's been done in Europe? And it's because it's hard, right? And we've managed to crack all of those problems. But there is a point when the training takes over. And as Mel said, you kind of fall into that rhythm of the teams know what they need to do. They know when they need to make the decisions they need to make. And that's good, right? You want to make sure that you don't operate outside that sphere. But immense excitement for sure. And I'd say that the real achievements here are not the successes that necessarily you can see. It's about all of the challenges that collectively as a team people have had to overcome. And a lot of it you don't see, whether it's dealing with international partners, whether it's dealing with different government departments and bringing them together in a coherent fashion. That has really marked an immense amount of effort. And of course the culmination of all of that is putting these exciting missions into space as well. It's the things that are at the pointy end of the rocket that really matter as well here.
Hi, David Parsley from the iPaper. How long, once it's in the air, will you know the mission's been successful? And what are you most concerned could go wrong once it's above the clouds?
Well, let's see. The mission will take a little bit over an hour after we leave the airport to get into position for releasing the rocket. And after that, it's on the order of 50 to 60 minutes before we have released the satellites and gotten the data back on the orbital performance. So it sounds it'll be quick. As we're watching ourselves fly. We'll do a 3-minute burn on the first stage, followed by about 6 minutes of second stage burn. We'll coast around Antarctica, come up around near Australia, and then we'll watch the final burn and the payloads deployed. Any space flight, everything needs to go right, and that's what we're about.
In terms of the accessibility of the horizontal launch system, how easily can it be expanded to other airports in the UK? Are there plans to do this, and what challenges are associated with it?
There are around 7 other spaceports that have, of course, been identified in the UK for both vertical and horizontal launch. The likes of, for example, Snowdonia as well, and Glasgow Prestwick are other horizontal launch sites. And they're very much in the stages of development, of course, and either with their own regional governments or indeed as private entities. So the opportunities are there. Of course, you've got to see to ensure that there's a market there that can support that. But what I would say, of course, there is always, if you're first to market, if you're there first doing it, then you almost create an anchor type opportunity as well. So, the spaceport here, it's got its license. It'll demonstrate that it's been operating as a spaceport as well. So that's a real gem that Cornwall have got, of course.
Hi, Vicky from the Daily Mail. I just wanted to ask if you see space tourism operating out of Cornwall at any point. I also wondered if there's anything personal on board that anybody's taking, anything Cornish, tin, pasties, I don't know.
Yeah, so we're pretty much focused 100% on satellite launch at the moment. That's challenging as it is, before you add humans to that mix. But the future of more crewed spaceflight in the future is changing. The technologies are changing. We've announced an MOU with Sierra Space, for instance, which is as a return landing site, which may have people on board that in the future as well. The Cornwall Council has always said we'll have to have another look at it if we do start to look at human space flight. As a spaceport, we're really interested in human space flight and the opportunities with researchers going up for microgravity experiments, for instance. But also, of course, there's a lot going on in the tourism side of it as well, and putting some of these more humans into space to see the curvature of the Earth and what they come back down and do when they get back after that, being influenced by that overview effect. So I think we'll start to look at the opportunities in that, but 100% focus on satellite launch at the moment.
I'd add to that as well, certainly focusing on the human space flight element of it rather than space tourism, of course. There's no policy requirement for space tourism within the UK at the moment, but of course, from a human space flight perspective, we'll have to see what the future holds. In terms of personalisation, then I would just add, of course, one of the important parts about this programme is the inspiration that it provides. And as part of that, we've had a number of competitions that have been run, one of which was for youngsters to have a lift-off logo competition, which a young chap from Preston won. And, the prize for winning that was to have his logo inside the fairing of this launch as well. So young Callum from Preston, age 6, I'm sure will be very excited to see his logo that represents the values of this mission actually going up into space. And that's just an example of how we should be thinking about inspiring that younger generation to get into this sector.
And if I could pile on a little bit to that, you know, through COVID, we were working together, and virtually, I think we've had about 10,000 students in our factory with our engineers talking about space and rockets and how they fly. And so we've actually touched quite a bit of the community already. And I do want to bring us back to the inspiring satellites, because that's what this mission is all about. You know, manufacturing in space, different ways of using GPS and navigation, different technologies for satellites, understanding maritime behaviors and illegal fishing and piracy and things like that. I think in the world that we're in, as well as the important allied collaboration from the national security community, I think we can all personally connect with one or more of the satellites that are flying on this mission.
Hi, Felix Gatfield with the Felix's Spacetime Educational YouTube channel. What educational opportunities will Spaceport Cornwall present to young people who have an interest in aerospace in the short term and the long term?
Hi, Felix. Thanks for that. Well, you're here, and that's fantastic. This is what it is all about, and I've said this many times. The reason my whole team get up every single morning is to inspire the next generation. That's what we all should be trying to do, to get not just into the space industry, but STEM in general. And Launch Inspires is actually really easy to go into a school and get kids excited about space launch. The hard bit is then showing them the pathways into the industry. So my team have been working incredibly hard on developing partnerships with local colleges and universities. We've actually set up institutes and built facilities already so that people go for intro can become, you know, start to work on satellites in college. Working with University of Exeter, we've written modules on things like space economics. So starting to think outside the box. It's not just about the aerospace engineering side of it anymore. You can bring in like insurance and law and the humanities. And so for us, it's just important that we kind of show the breadth of the industry and all the different things that can be possible, including the arts as well. So trying to break down some of those perceptions of the space industry is something we're proud of. But really the big thing is getting people up on site and showing them. We've done a lot of that. That massive rocket behind you there, that is the replica rocket that was built by the UK Space Agency. We've had thousands of kids already come up and see that and be talked through that. So having something physical really helps. And I think after the launch, we have a lot of plans to take tours through the integration facility and just get kids living and breathing what's on their doorstep for the first time. So lots planned. We've been working with Disney, for instance. We've got a young space crew that will be following along the launch tomorrow. So there's just so many, it's kind of endless, but it's the best bit of the job, definitely.
Thank you. It's great to hear you spell STEM with an A. My name's Nick. I'm just a dad from an organisation called STEAMco, and I'm on a mission to inspire 1 million kids to aim higher than my high vis. You are very inspiring people. You're obviously very successful. You're up there and I'm down here. I wonder if you could all think back to when you were young. That moment, that spark you had, that teacher, that place, that thing you did that brought you here today, that inspired your journey, because I think that's what we've got to find and encourage our young people to find.
Well, let's see. I mean, my spark, I guess, was the summer of 1969, and my parents made me stay up late. I was in New York, and watch a grainy picture of two men come off of a contraption onto the lunar surface. And it made me realize that what the possibilities are, that there was a tremendous amount of hope and goodness in being able to operate in moving humankind into space. You know, that just has carried me into a community of an incredible community of innovation and terrific people who are all striving for the same ideals, and that's a very powerful force. And I would say that for the community here, having spent time in Cape Canaveral and other launch sites, there's something about knowing that somebody down the block is working on a spaceflight mission that sort of breaks the barrier down and makes it go from being something that's very far away to being something that is around the corner and something that a child would say, you know, I could do that.
Never did I ever think that I would be sat on this stage, or indeed, you know, running this program as the senior responsible owner. I'd kind of go back to, I do remember, even though I've got more grey hair than Dan, I certainly remember 1969 as a very, very young baby. But I think if I go back to August and September 1977, was when Elvis died. But at the same time, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 were being launched, and they're still continuing out on their journey beyond the Earth sphere, which is the final kind of constraints of the galaxy. And I remember that very much as a child, and giving me that spark about wanting to be involved with physics and engineering. And that, I think, is probably where the journey has started. I mean, I've never been one for planning where I'll be next, but that, I think, was very much the start for me, and I've been very lucky and have worked very hard to improve my engineering skills. I think that was very much the start of the journey. I'd probably take it back to August and September 1977 and the start of Voyager 1 and 2.
I think for me, it's slightly different. I grew up in a very, very remote part of British Columbia, Canada, and for me, I think the spark was the night sky. I was so fortunate enough to grow up with the Northern Lights quite frequently in the winter, and so for me, I guess it was more a spark of wonder. What is out there? What are humans going to do out there? What are we going to see out there? What are we going to find out there? And I unfortunately had a teacher that told me when I said I was interested in astronomy that there was no future in that where I was, so think about doing something else. Here I am. But it took me a little bit longer than it probably should have, and I think that's kind of set the tone for my mission, is to never let a teacher say that to children, to show that absolutely you can do something like this on your doorstep, especially girls. I have 2 daughters myself, and I see, you know, how they're treated sometimes very differently, and that's not okay. So for me, it's really important that, you know, as the head of the Spaceport, that I'm in schools and I'm talking to girls and working with programs like Tech Girls to get girls excited about STEAM and excited about entering the industry of space as well. So it's been a bit of a journey for me. I never expected, like Ian, to be sat, you know, doing this, but I'm so immensely proud of what I have achieved. Thanks.
Hi, Kate Duffy from Business Insider. Obviously, this is such a significant launch. Where does this launch put the UK in the space industry? Where does it place it?
So, if you look at, I mean, you know, the space industry is worth around about £16.5 billion annually to the UK economy and employs 47,000 people, and that's growing. And we are absolutely fantastic at designing satellites and building satellites. You know, I always use the heuristic that we build more satellites here in the UK than anywhere outside of the US. And we're also great at operating satellites as well as exploiting the data, which is a really, really important end of it as well. So we're kind of on a journey, and this helps us with that journey and fills that, what I call that end-to-end capability. So you can do everything within that. We are the 4th largest spender in the European Space Agency, and we've increased our commitment to over £1.85 billion to the European Space Agency. And we work very closely, of course, with our European Space Agency and also bilaterally with other countries and such organisations as NASA. So the UK is kind of as respected as a proven space nation. And if you look at some of those missions that have been launched recently, whether it be the Mars Perseverance, which had UK technology on it, or whether you look at the James Webb Space Telescope, whose mid-infrared instrument was actually pressed by the UK, and the principal investigator for that was from the UK. So the UK is very respected in space, and this again continues to reinforce that and allows us to grow so we can achieve being that science superpower as well as contributing towards the economy and inspiring the next generation of people who will come ultimately to take over from the likes of us.
Hey, Joe. Okay, we're going to pause in-person questions for a second so we can take a few from our online joiners. So I'm going to start off thinking back to where we are right now at Spaceport Cornwall at Airport Newquay. What are the main challenges of turning an airport into a spaceport is the first part of that question. And then maybe for Dan specifically, does Virgin Oribt have other launch locations in sight elsewhere in the world? And what are the lessons learned from this experience of turning Spaceport Cornwall into the first UK spaceport?
You want to start?
Yeah, I think initially it was probably just belief that we could. We were actually quite confident as a team that we had what it take, this amazing asset that we have here at Cornwall Airport Newquay, one of the longest runways in the UK, and access over the sea, and also just the will of the team here at the airport to think, oh, wait a minute, we can turn into a spaceport. So belief, I would say, was the start, but the foundations that are already here meant that we could have probably, don't listen CA, but we could have launched the day after we were potentially announced from a facilities perspective. You know, we have this fantastic runway and that could handle 747s, and we've done so. So turning the spaceport or the airport into the spaceport has really just been to future-proof it, a lot of it, and to grasp the opportunity from the wider space industry. So we've done things to the site like strengthen taxiways and turn pads at the end of the runway so that Cosmic Girl can maneuver a lot easier and more efficiently. And we've done things like build our space systems integration facility where the satellites are integrated into the fairing of the rocket. We never planned to build that building initially, but we had an opportunity to get a little bit of funding. And that's really exciting for us because, of course, it's being used by Virgin. It's a fantastic world-class facility, but when Virgin are not here, we can open it up to other companies. We have a brand new facility that's opening adjacent to that, which will have other space companies. It's full, and we haven't even opened it yet. That's how excited people are. So we're just building on what's already here that the airport has, and we've added a few bits and pieces that will future-proof the site and make it a little bit bespoke to some parts of what Virgin required as well. But you know, to be able to develop an airport for less than £20 million to turn into a spaceport, I think is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, I would say, number one, the G7 was a great proving ground for bringing in 747s, so that was convenient. Spaceport Cornwall has been a phenomenal host, first of all, so thank you.
Thanks for being a great neighbor.
As far as the complexities, look, dealing with logistics, dealing with planning, coordinating timelines, and setting up, when we're doing operations with hazardous materials and making sure we have the right coordination, the right regulatory approvals. Those are the complexities. Those are the hard parts. The good thing looking ahead is we now have learned all those. And going ahead, we've got them. There's other things like coordinating our flyouts and airspace and things like that, which is kind of similar. Those are where the complexities are. Overall, the coming here and turning a slab of cement into a spaceport went incredibly smoothly. I think within a handful of days, we were up and operating from blank cement to Launch Operations Center. And so, it's been an incredible journey. And now we're here.
And then following up on that, Dan, could you talk a little bit more about the different launch locations and sites elsewhere around the world and what's next?
Sure. I mean, we've been having discussions across the globe. I mean, the ability to come to an airport and turn a slab of cement into a spaceport is something that's very interesting and generally has never really been done before. And so there's quite a bit of interest. We have agreements that we have announced recently with Australia, in Japan. We have an agreement with Luxembourg looking across NATO needs. And so, we see a great opportunity to really change the framework for launch. Launch was traditionally done in a couple places in the world. and regions and countries, couldn't do it. Well, with our technology and the will and the technologies within the UK and other countries where now satellite companies are all over the place, it'll be natural to have an ecosystem where there's launch and spacecraft manufacturing and operations. And I think that's the model of the future, and we're going to see that, each region will want a piece of that future.
So we are going from, this is from aerospace, we are going from the UK having no sovereign space access to 7 spaceports and launchers coming online. The question, I believe this is for Ian, is without a strong anchor tenant like NASA, can the UK support all of these competing spaceports, and what are your outlooks for that?
I'd say to that the space economy is not static, particularly in low Earth orbit. If you look at the number of small satellites that were launched back in 2012, I think it was something like 500 or so. If you look at the number of launches that took place last year, or 2021, there was 1,900. 1,700 of those were small satellites. So the market is changing rapidly. There is a strong demand for micro launchers and to get small satellites into low Earth orbit. So there's more than enough in terms of a demand signal for us to respond to. So certainly we don't need to rely on those large national anchor tenants such as NASA, and I think that the UK can certainly demonstrate that it can compete in the small satellite launch market for the foreseeable future. And in terms of the number of spaceports that we've got as well, then again, I think there's an opportunity for them to develop and demonstrate that if they're competitive for launch, then again they can get after what we call that addressable market as well. But I would say that having both horizontal and vertical launch capabilities are very much complementary as well. So I don't see them as a competitive capability. I see them as offering different capabilities, and therefore there's certainly room for vertical and horizontal launch here in the UK in a global market that continues to grow.
Melissa, can you give us an update on KernoSat and when you expect to launch and what the latest is for that?
Our lockdown baby, KernoSat. So KernoSat is our community satellite that we kind of came together to think about how can we engage the local community with space? How can we bring space down to Earth and down to an area like Cornwall? And we thought, what if we came up with a small satellite that could help benefit a local issue? And so KernoSat 1 was born out of that, and at G7 we were, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the time announced funding for it, and we are designing and building and launching and tracking KernoSat all from Cornwall for Cornwall. So it is a small communications satellite that will work with sensors around the coast of Cornwall, and it will monitor our ocean health around the coast of Cornwall. And it will do things like, one of the projects we're working with is looking at seagrass restoration off the coast of Cornwall. We're looking at monitoring the temperature, visibility, pollution levels. Our end goal is really to plant a kelp farm for carbon sequestration in the future, and use it as a great case study in how we can use blue carbon to help with some of the local environmental issues here, as well as engage local schools. So the schools will be helping us, and we've run a few think tanks already that John Paffett has run with local universities, getting the students involved in not just the design of the satellite, but also we're looking at how we process the data and getting the kids to help us with that as well. So KernoSat 1 is in the process of being built, and we're hoping to launch it potentially on the second launch, if not the third, with Virgin. And very much it's just the start of a program of future satellites that we just want to get bigger and better. We've been blown away by how much interest there is in a project like this. It sounds simple, like that's to create a piece of technology for the community, but what we've seen is the excitement around, okay, we can really bring space right down to Earth by a project like this. So something we're really excited about.
Awesome. I have one more question from online, and then I'll take a couple more questions in the room. Since, people are eager to have a few more questions in. I think this one is probably best suited for Dan, but others can jump in. Why is the launch happening at night?
Well, you know, spacecraft have their requirements, and each one has a mission. One of our spacecraft has a requirement associated with where they are at a specific point of the day, and when it crosses the equator is how it's defined. And so that defines the launch time. You know, again, the purpose of the launch is to make sure that the satellites on board, you know, have the right orbits and have the right ability to conduct their missions, and that's why we're doing it late at night.
Great. Is there anyone else in person? We'll get you a mic just a second.
Nathan Hunkin from Chaos TV and Radio. It's been quite an exciting journey to get to where we are today, and I know everyone wishes you the best of luck for tomorrow. With that in mind, what is the message to the international space community here forward from little old Newquay here in Cornwall? And if I may, with sustainability and reusability in mind, can you tell us a little bit about why Virgin Oribt is such a great, viable option?
Wow, what's the message? You know, I would say, number one, you know, space has become such an incredible part of our life. From the way we communicate, to the way we navigate, to how we understand our world and the heavens beyond. But space is now coming to you, is the message. You know, one of the purposes in Virgin Oribt is to open up space for everyone. And that's exactly what we're doing. In that space is not a faraway thing that somebody else does anymore. It's what communities across the world do. And you know, that's a large part of what our organization is about.
I think just to add to that, we're really proud of working with Virgin Oribt on our sustainability because we're, I think, the first kind of partnership that's actually looked at things like our carbon impact. So being transparent about what our impact is in the first place. As Dan said, satellites are so fundamental in everyday life now, but the way they get to space currently is impacting the environment, which tends to seem quite ironic to a lot of people, and I understand that. So we want to do a better job at actually how we can get this incredible technology to space, but in a more responsible way, in a more sustainable way, in a more ethical way, and in a more transparent way. And that's why you can find out about exactly what our impact is. That's been helped by the regulations that the UK have put in place. And that we're not just going to stop there. We want to look at how we can work with Virgin Oribt and other operators to bring that impact down, work towards carbon neutrality in the first instance, and bring in things like nature-based solutions to the site, even how we're working with projects like the Eden Project, and bring people that know a lot more about sustainability than I do to kind of be our critical friends and help us on this journey, because I truly, as an environmentalist myself, believe in the power in space to make Earth a better place, but we just need to be aware of the impact that we do have in getting the tech to space and how we can do it better.
Yeah, just maybe jumping on that a little further. I mean, you know, we have a unique method of flying to space and a real reuse in that. If you think back on all the launches that you've seen, usually you're watching the wildlife in a wildlife preserve, and then a very fierce, powerful rocket lifts off and flies to space. We're going to reuse a 747 tomorrow, a runway. We'll leave the ground in a normal way that we all fly, go out up to 35,000 feet, and the rocket will start there, a more efficient approach and a much lighter touch approach than normal. So there's environmentally, we sort of have taken a big leap with this technology. And then, of course, everything that Mel just said about, you know, we understand what's going on in our planet. We understand how to optimize our behaviors, largely because of what we understand from space.
I'd say that a Boeing 747 is probably the ultimate reusable first stage. You know, I think Falcon 9 are probably up to around about 90 times before they start to think about whether they should replace it. So I wouldn't like to think about the cycle time on Cosmic Girl. It's probably been up and down quite a few more times than that. And in terms of sustainability, then the UK is, of course, it's a principal driver for the United Nations long-term sustainability goals as well. So we're very, very much attuned to that, particularly through our regulatory environment. So for before you can license any satellite on space, you have to make sure that they can demonstrate they meet those sustainability values. And that's sustaining space as a domain, as well as actually looking at what it does on Earth as well. So we can protect that fragile environment as much as the one that we have within the atmosphere as well.
Hi, Alex Wilkins from New Scientist. The past 4 launches have all been in California, and now we're in Newquay near the coast. What are the biggest changes you've had to make launching in Newquay, and have you faced any massive challenges from launching in such a different environment now?
I would say pasties versus hamburgers, is a significant shift. From the operation of the system, it's essentially the same. Matter of fact, we did a launch rehearsal in California before we came here, just to make sure we checked everything before we left the U.S. Certainly, the partnerships are probably the biggest differences. And I really, we're very appreciative of the partnerships that have been in place, as we mentioned. I mean, the airport logistics, the UK Space Agency, Spaceport Cornwall, the RAF, the CAA, and all of the other organizations. That's probably the biggest difference, but in terms of the technology and how we operate, a little different weather than Mojave, but otherwise the team is turning the wrenches in the same way.
I think Stanley's been surprised at how many people are going to be showing up tomorrow to watch it, because he said in Mojave, like 2 people, maybe look through the fence, because I see it so much over there. So I think that would be a difference.
Hi, Ollie from Cornwall Live. I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned more launches in the future, if this one works very well. Have you got a timescale? Have you got a plan for 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 a year? Well, what's the future looking like for Cornwall here?
We would like to be back if we could before the end of the year. I'm not sure that will happen, but it's not out of the question. Certainly our focus right now is today and tomorrow, but we're in discussions right now. There's work to do across the payload community. Again, it starts with a payload, but there are a number of ideas percolating, working with UK Space Agency and the rest of the community. So, we would like to start a rhythm. I think right now we're very, very focused clearly on launch number 1.
I think it's very clear to me that Virgin Oribt have made a strong commitment to being a global operator. Bought 2 new aircraft, 2 aircraft, again, to supplement their existing operations in order to do that globally. And the UK very much wants to be part of that, and I think that we can demonstrate that we will be, Europe's principal launch operator, particularly having done it for the first time, and then complementing that against other sites that we've got. So very much, this is not a one-shot and then go away again. We need to make sure that we can work together and demonstrate that you can launch the right missions and be competitive. And it's not just competitive on price, it's having the right legal framework, regulatory framework, operating in a stable democracy helps as well. So there's many, many factors here that will make the UK an attractive place for people to operate from.
I think it's worth noting as well is very much Virgin Oribt as our anchor tenant, but we have other operators that will be coming to use the site when Virgin are not here. And as I mentioned before, we're really developing the kind of cluster around it. Virgin Oribt are quite a magnet of interest for other space companies to co-locate and to be alongside. And that's why I meant we've filled a building already with other companies looking to move to the site. So very much when VR are launching elsewhere in the world, we'll be very active on site here. And the beauty of the airport is it's not all eggs in one basket. It's not just launch at this site. There's so many other things going on at the airport that we're just one kind of business activity here. So it means that we can develop lots of different parts of the business, and that makes it a lot more sustainable as a spaceport. We're not just wholly, waiting for Virgin to come and launch every year. We have lots of other activities going on.
This is for Virgin Oribt. At the beginning of 2022, there was news that you guys, first of all, were planning on reusing the first stage of Launcher 1, as well as reusing the 747, and also to add a third stage, possibly powered by ion engines. Can you comment about any of those new technologies?
Sure. I mean, we've got a wonderful product, but whenever you have a technology, you are evolving it. And so, there's a lot of opportunity to flex and the performance of our system, both in terms of more payload to orbit, as well as reaching orbits like lunar or interplanetary. And so we do have a partnership with Exoterra that we announced last year, that we're developing a electric upper stage in support of some NASA activity and some other international activity that we have. Let's see, I didn't, the rest of your question.
Reusability.
Oh, reusability. And we continue to look at reusability. We have a very simple first stage, so the economics is not completely clear at closes when you get through the full logistic life cycle there. It's not out of the cards. We haven't yet committed to reuse, but it is something in our trade space that we continue to evaluate, and we've got concepts that are in development.
Charlotte Scotland from Global. Firstly, congratulations to getting to this point. I know you've been working really hard. Hours away from the launch, can you kind of paint a picture for people at home about what the atmosphere is going to be like in the control room?
Sure. I think Mel said it right, focused. You have a bubbling of excitement within, but you have to sort of put that aside. And the team right now is smiling, but their eyes are laser sharp as we're going through our checkouts and going through our communications. Space launch is a very serious business, and we'll be looking at integrating all of the information about the system, about the weather, about the range, and anticipating and supporting each other as we go through a very exciting but very rigorous process.
I have one more online question, and I think we're going to take one more in person after that. This is, I think, for the group in different ways. How much interest have you had from the UK Ministry of Defense or other countries outside of the US for security-related responsive launch using the Launcher One system?
Well, first of all, we are honored to have on board the National Reconnaissance Office, DSTL, the Naval Research Lab. The whole idea of working on a mission where the MOD and RAF and Space Force and the NRO are collaborating, where we can facilitate allied collaboration, it's an honor, and it's so important today. Certainly Ukraine woke up the world in a lot of ways, and we're in a different place than we used to be. I don't know if everybody's noticed it, but over the last year, we've all gotten used to understanding what's going on by seeing overhead images, something that the national security community has done for decades. We now do with our families every night while we're watching the news. So that's a huge change. Clearly, there is a pan-European as well as a U.S. collaboration and desire to collaborate across allies to make sure that that space capability is always there for us and that we have responsiveness so that if something happens in the world, we can get assets there right away. And we happen to have a space launch system that operates like an airplane because it has an airplane. And that's something that has been thought about for decades and is now here. And so, we're excited to be supporting incredible innovation in the commercial world, and Space Forge and Catapult and all the other SatRev and all the other commercial programs, and we're equally excited to be here at the heart of allied collaboration in space.
I'd add to that, Dan, that I mean, I've been involved in this game for a number of years where I've seen a transition that goes from space being the preeminent use of national security, military activities, and that's kind of transitioned now to very much a commercial opportunity. So it's inevitable that, of course, those commercial capabilities can either have dual purpose or it's indeed a shared expense. So I find myself working much closer with the UK's Ministry of Defence and indeed other allies as well from a civil perspective, because it's that natural transition, whether it's because it gives you greater resilience or redundancy or duality of systems, whether that's for position, navigation and timing or communications or Earth observation, or it gives you quicker access for things like Earth observation, as we've seen in Ukraine as well. So it's a natural transition that both helps us develop security capabilities, but also actually for governments it keeps costs down, whilst also providing commercial opportunities as well.
Great, and with that, I think we're going to close out our time today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us in person and online. We'll still be available for a few minutes here in Newquay to answer questions offline, but we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the launch. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Did you see that?